I think it comes down again to the fact that we've created schools that are really not compatible for how children learn and what we're learning from brain science about how children learn. So to be able to fashion a school at the classroom level and at the school level really takes some purposeful planning and I believe needs to be informed by the latest research that we have. A lot of practices are happening out there that are not based in any evidence. And the results are school systems that we have now. We need to be able to address the needs of the child and understand how every child learns. And to me, that comes to us through neuroeducation and specifically the brain-targeted teaching models, the way I deliver that.
우선 아이들의 뇌를
First of all, I believe we really need to respect children's brains.
아이들은
Because children they're not computers and they're not tools or devices for us to use.
존중과 사랑이
Education without love and respect, that's abuse and it's torture. For example, children before they start school are all outstanding. Why are they outstanding? For example, if you're trying to learn a foreign language at school, it's really not easy. In Korea, all the students need to learn English. And these days, they start from elementary school. And they even have private tutoring from elementary school on, and in middle school and high school, they're all learning English. So although they actually learn it for over 10 years, but they can't actually speak the language. So even though they've studied English for over 10 years, if a Korean person comes to the US and they go to a restaurant, they have trouble ordering food in English. And this is true even for the students that were successful academically. So I'm not even talking about the students who did poorly in English in Korea, but the ones that supposedly excelled in English in Korea, they can't actually apply and use the language. And the reason why is because they studied just specifically for the test. It's hard to say whether the testing is for the teachers or for the schools or the systems. And so even though so much time is consumed and so much money is invested, in the end the result is that the student cannot speak English. And so the teachers keep administering tests because that's their duty. And so they check the tests, they give them scores, they give evaluations, but the results are just not good. But if you examine the process by which a child learns the language from his or her parents, then the thing is they never have to take a test. So when parents are teaching their children a language, they don't give them tests, and they don't give them those kinds of evaluations, and they don't have private tutoring. But by the time a child is 3, then they're able to have enough of a conversation that they can get through life. And kids are able to speak fluently before they start school. And before they start school, they don't even care how well they can speak that language or not in Korean. It's something that you take for granted. You assume everyone can speak the language. And I believe that's because when parents teach their children the language, they do it with that love and respect. And given that love and respect, our brain becomes very activated and it's in excellent condition. But with constant evaluation or scolding and that kind of negative response, the brain becomes more like shriveled or crumpled, and it cowers. And the worst possible thing for the brain's condition is fear and anxiety. But the school environment is more conducive to fear and anxiety. And that's why so many students, maybe even about 80%, are really not satisfied or happy with their life at school. The scariest thing. So what's most frightening is that they lose their sense of self-worth, they lose confidence. So a student who has lost his or her self-confidence and sense of self-worth, then they also won't feel hope. Then if a person, a student, has lost their sense of self-confidence and self-worth and hope, then what value can they offer society? And that's why I feel that brain education from an early age is important. And that's why I feel it's so important to implement this not only in the schools, but with the parents of the students. And I think it's really important for everyone to be informed of and recognize the importance of the brain. My case is a pretty special and unique case, so I never took notes. And I don't think I ever did my homework. So of course there's no way I could possibly have good grades. And always in my mind I felt resistance and also anxiety.
나 자신에 대한 가치를
But if I hadn't been
스스로
able to find my own sense of
못했다면
self-worth on my own in the end,
어떻게 됐을까?
then I think what would have happened to me?
정말로
And that's what makes me feel that brain
중요하지
education is so important.
엘살바도르의 그 상황은
The circumstances in El Salvador are such that the society has a lot of instability.
왜냐하면
And if you're looking at the students, then over 90% of their parents are either involved in gangs or they're involved in drugs. And the students are put together in a situation where they have to be in the same classroom with someone where, for example, you have a boy and his father, the boy's friend's father killed his own father, so that kind of situation. So they lost their ability to laugh. They weren't able to laugh and there was no hope. And they knew after they graduated from school, then over 90% of them would either be involved in gangs or drugs. So with those circumstances, it would be really difficult, maybe impossible to see the ideal scholastic attitude. And so they didn't laugh anymore. The students had no passion. So of course they wouldn't bother with homework, or they would be tardy or absent, and a lot of students just didn't bother to go. And there were also many students who just dropped out completely. But we have an example of brain education being introduced in a school in El Salvador through the UN. And there was a pilot program that lasted about 3 months. And so the first thing that happened was we enabled the students to interact with each other in such a way that they could develop positive relationships. And so we allowed them to have physical contact with each other, and we did very, very basic healing or simple massage, tapping, and we made them laugh out loud and tap their chest and laugh. And we also enabled them to interact deeply with themselves. So we had them have conversations with themselves, but also have interactions with the other students as well. And even just after the first month, the students realized I can have fun on my own, and I can also have fun with my friends at school. And deep in their hearts, of course, the kids really wanted to laugh, and they really wanted to play. And so through this process of brain education being introduced in the school changed completely. So now we have a variety of data about how the students changed. But first of all, the students were able to laugh again. And a notable difference was that the number of students that actually greeted their teachers really increased a lot. So it showed that a relationship of trust developed between the students and teachers. And one of the students at this school was 15, and she had a baby.
근데 그 아기는 자기 친어 아버지가 아닌 무슨 아버지.
And what happened was that she had a son because she was raped by her stepfather. And so with that happening to her, she really didn't have any hope. But she was able to participate in this brain education program just before she was pretty much ready to drop out. But through this, she found that she was able to laugh again, and she also started studying harder, and she became a model student at school. And she found her sense of self-worth, she discovered her value, and she resolved to raise her child in the most positive way she could. And she also set a goal for herself to go to college. So that's just one example. And then those results were reported in the UN.
그러면서 관심을 갖고 엘살바도르
Right now, the president of El Salvador is very interested in the brain education program, and we're in the process of introducing brain education to the public school system in El Salvador. In the end, it's about that trust and respect for another human being, and being able to have that interaction with yourself and interact with others around you. And that's the kind of environment that the students really want. In a sense, you could say they're just playing together and having fun. But through that, at the same time, they're able to recover the senses that they'd lost touch with. And just by doing that, if you can restore the functions of your brain to their normal, healthy state, then it really brings that sense of humanity to life. For example, if we're growing a plant or a tree, if you don't give it water, or if the weather is too cold, Under
이런
those conditions,
상태는
the tree
나무가 잘
cannot
자랄
grow
수가
well.
없습니다.
But even if
환경만
you just
정상으로
provide the
해줘도
normal, good,
평을
healthy
보고 잘해라
conditions,
잘해라
instead of
하지
forcing
그
students
나무가
to
잘
keep
자라
taking
열매도
tests
맺고
again and again and just telling them to do well,
제일 중요한
the
것은
most important
자기
is
가치를
to
느끼게
make
해주는
people
거예요.
feel their true value
그리고
within.
어떤 것이든지
Whatever
그
it is, if there's
학생이
something the
잘하는 것에
student is
대해서
good at, to really give them
칭찬해 주는
praise
거예요.
and
그럴 때
compliment.
자기에 대한
And that's when
가치를
they can
찾게
find
되고
value in themselves. And then they
정상적으로
can
잘
grow
살게
well in
됩니다.
a normal way.
환경이
And so
필요하죠.
it requires the appropriate environment, a nurturing environment.
그렇게 생각합니다.
And that's what I think.
Well, I've been training teachers for about the past 10 years almost in brain-targeted teaching from all over, through conferences in all over this country and in Greece and Italy. And I do courses now, online courses where teachers all over the country are learning this. And their stories, much like the story we heard from Ilchi Lee here, their stories about their students really propel me. I mean, they're just striking stories of children whose lives have turned around because they have a focus on the emotional connection to learning, which is the first part of the brain-targeted teaching model, is creating that climate. And research is showing us that when children are living, especially children in poverty, are developing something that's called toxic stress, and it's actually causing brain structures to wither, and they actually shrink. And part of those brain structures that shrink are the part that processes emotion. And so many of the children then come into schools with no hope and violence. So creating that positive emotion is the first step. You know, we can't get to learning until we have children understanding their own value and worth. So I will now tell you about my own particular school, because this was developed when I was a school principal. I was principal of a very large school in Baltimore City, kindergarten through 8th grade, about 1,300 children. And the test scores were not good when I first got there. And so my job was to improve test scores. And we did it, and we did it fast. Within 5 years, we became a blue ribbon school of excellence. And, you know, everybody was happy and praising us. But there was something missing. We were focusing on test scores. We weren't focusing on children. And I could feel that in the school. So as the leader, I knew that I had to make a change. And it could risk lowering the test scores because I didn't know. But I designed the brain-targeted teaching model around the idea that children need to be honored in the school environment, and that we have to create environments that are not just about how you score in the test. And that then is what we tell you about your worth. Does that sound familiar to what you heard from Ilchi Lee? Yes. So the brain-targeted teaching model is 6 segments, and the first starts with very purposeful acts that the teachers do to create an emotional climate conducive to learning. And it goes on for the other 6 targets, and I won't talk about them all now, but I will say that integrating art into how children learn and using the art to help them learn content material, and have them remember information. What we found was that it made learning more joyful and that children remembered that information better. The other component that's very important in brain-targeted teaching is to use knowledge meaningfully in real-world context. So let's get to the example Ilchi Lee gave about learning English. If you're learning it in a rote way, you're not going to learn it, and that's any subject, science, social studies, mathematics. But when children learn it in creative ways, when they learn that information in ways they can apply it in the real world, That information becomes real to them. And so I started to see my school transform. We still had high test scores. In fact, they even went up higher. But learning became visible and learning became more joyful. And that's what I want for every school.